They say cold cases die quietly. No headlines, no funerals, just a slow fade into storage rooms and forgotten shelves. But some cases don't die. They wait. 32 years ago, in a town too small to make national news, a body was found in the early hours of a winter morning. Male, mid-30s, no identification, no visible signs of struggle. The official report called it accidental death, exposure, alcohol involved. Case closed in 48 hours, and that should have been the end. But the file didn't disappear. It was mislabeled, misfiled, and quietly renamed. Lazarus, no one remembers who gave it that name. There's no record of the decision, just a handwritten label on a fading manila folder, as if someone knew this case would come back from the dead. For decades, it sat untouched, until a routine digitization project cracked it open. A junior analyst, new, meticulous, and unfamiliar with the town's unspoken rules, noticed something odd. The case had fingerprints logged, but never run, dental records listed, but never compared, and a coroner's report signed off without a toxicology breakdown. This wasn't negligence, this was omission. When the analyst flagged the irregularities, supervisors told him to move on. Old case, limited resources, nothing to gain, but curiosity has a way of spreading. Within weeks, the file landed on the desk of a cold case investigator who had built a career on reopening mistakes. He'd seen corruption, he'd seen incompetence, but he had never seen a case erased this cleanly. The victim had no name. No missing persons report matched the description. No photographs were circulated at the time. A burial record existed under county logs. It was as if the man had never lived. Then came the first shock. A modern fingerprint skin produced a hit, not recent, not domestic. The match came from an archived federal database flagged as inactive. The name attached to it belonged to someone who, according to public records, had died 5 years before the body was found. 2 deaths, 1 fingerprint. That's when the case stopped being a mystery and became a problem. Digging deeper revealed something worse. The same fingerprint appeared faintly, partially into other unsolved cases across different states, different decades, different victims, but the same quiet conclusion every time. Accidental, unexplained, closed. The Lazarus File wasn't a single case, it was a pattern. Someone had learned how to make deaths look empty, how to remove identity without leaving evidence, how to make people disappear on paper first, and whoever they were still alive because the systems that protected them were still in place. By the end of the first week, the investigator noticed something chilling. Every time the Lazarus File was accessed digitally, someone else logged in seconds later. No edits, no notes, just presence, watching. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was about exposure. And once a case like this wakes up, it doesn't go back to sleep. Once a case is reopened, it starts pulling threads, and threads lead to fabrications. The fingerprint hit was supposed to be impossible. A dead man's identity appearing years after his recorded death. So investigators did what the original case never did. They followed the name. According to federal archives, the fingerprint belonged to a man listed as deceased in 1987. Cause of death, house fire. What he recovered, death legally declared after 2 years. A convenient ending. The address where the fire supposedly occurred no longer existed. The street had been renamed, property redeveloped, but buried in zoning records was a detail no one noticed at the time. The fire department never responded. No emergency call, no dispatch log, no incident report. The death had been certified without a fire. That was the moment the investigation crossed the line. Because falsifying a death certificate requires more than silence, it requires access. The investigator expanded the search. What came back was worse. The same name slightly altered appeared in employment records tied to government contractors. Always short-term, always ending abruptly, always followed by relocation. The man had lived multiple lives, and every time he died, someone made it official. But why? The answer started to take shape when the second Lazarus-linked case was re-examined. Woman found drowned in a reservoir, ruled an accident. No witnesses, except there had been one, a teenager who reported seeing her argue with a man near the water. His statement existed, but it was never entered into evidence. Instead, it was sealed under a non-disclosure order. signed by a judge who, years later, would be indicted for unrelated corruption charges. Coincidence was no longer an option. As timelines overlapped, a chilling pattern emerged. Every victim had been in contact with the same person within 48 hours of their death, sometimes professionally, sometimes socially, sometimes briefly, but always directly, and that person never stayed. The Lazarus File wasn't documenting a killer in the traditional sense. There was no rage, no signature. It was documenting a system, a method of erasure. The investigator requested access to sealed court records tied to the cases. The request was denied twice, then something unexpected happened. An anonymous package arrived. No return address, no fingerprints. Inside was a flash drive, and on it, internal memos, email chains, and authorization codes spanning decades. They detailed a shadow program designed to create clean assets, people who could move freely, disappear legally, and if necessary remove problems without leaving. Evidence: the victims weren't random, they were liabilities, witnesses, accountants, contractors who asked the wrong questions. And the Lazarus identity, it wasn't a person, it was a role, passed on, reassigned, resurrected. Every time the role changed hands, the previous Lazarus died on paper. The investigator realized the truth too late. He wasn't uncovering history. He was threatening something active, because the final file on the drive wasn't old. It was dated 3 days earlier, and it contained his name. The moment the investigator saw his own name in the file, the room felt smaller. Not because of fear, but because of confirmation. The Lazarus system wasn't theoretical. It was operational. The document was clinical. No threats, no emotion, just a risk assessment. His digital footprint mapped, his access logs noted, his recent communication summarized at the bottom of the page. A single line. Exposure probability increasing. That was when he stopped trusting the process. If the official channels were compromised, every request he made was visible. Every login was logged twice, once by him, once by someone else, so he went analog, printed files, handwritten notes, payphones and borrowed phones, faces instead of emails. And that's when the witnesses started to die, not violently, not dramatically, quietly. A retired clerk who deprocessed death certificates in the 80s suffered a sudden stroke to days after being contacted. A former contractor who remembered special handling cases died in a single vehicle accident on an empty road. No signs of foul play, perfectly ordinary endings. The system didn't punish. Curiosity, it removed friction, then came the mistake. The low-level administrator, young, underpaid, and scared, made contact, not directly. Through a burner message, she confirmed what the documents implied. Lazarus wasn't a rogue program. It was policy, an off-books continuity mechanism designed during a time when deniability mattered more than law, when clean exits were cheaper than trials. The role of Lazarus was simple: exist, observe, erase. Each operator was trained, cycled, and officially killed when compromised. But something had gone wrong. When Lazarus didn't exit, he stayed, long enough to build leverage, long enough to stop being replaceable. The system that created him lost control, and instead of shutting it down, they protected it, because admitting Lazarus existed would expose everything. The investigator finally understood why the cold cases looked empty. They weren't failures. They were proof of success. He compiled everything: documents, recordings, timelines into one encrypted archive, not to release, to survive, because survival now depended on balance. If he disappeared, the files would go public. If he stayed quiet, Lazarus stayed buried, a dead man switch. But Lazarus had anticipated that too. One night, the investigator noticed something chilling. The archive had been accessed, not copied, not altered, opened. Someone wanted him to know they were closer. The final message arrived without words. Photograph, an old manila folder, a handwritten label, Lazarus, but beneath it, a new name had been added, his. By the time his name appeared on the folder, the investigator understood the truth. Lazarus wasn't hunting him. Lazarus was inviting him. The system didn't just erase people, it absorbed them. Every thread was repurposed, every exposure turned into continuity. Kill the investigator, and questions would follow. Recruit him, and silence would be permanent. The offer came indirectly. The meeting request logged into an obsolete calendar system. A location with no cameras. A time already passed. But he went anyway. The man waiting there looked ordinary, older, tired. Not a monster, not a mastermind, just the current Lazarus. He explained it without drama. Program was never meant to last this long. It was supposed to solve short-term problems, witnesses, leaks, loose ends. But success creates dependency. Governments changed, administrations fell, Lazarus remained. Because once you build a tool that makes problems disappear, you stop asking whether it should exist. The investigator was given a choice: expose everything and watch the system bury the truth under classified rubble, or step in, take the role, control the damage, decide who gets erased and who doesn't. He asked about the victims. The answer was simple: necessary losses. That night, the investigator returned home knowing he was already dead on paper, his accounts frozen, his records flagged, his exit prepared. Lazarus didn't kill people. It rewrote reality around them. At dawn, a data drop went live. Not the full archive, just enough to create noise, enough to trigger audits, enough to fracture the silence. Then the investigator vanished, officially declared deceased after a transportation incident that left no remains. The news cycle moved on within days. But the Lazarus File didn't close because something changed. Death slowed, cases reopened, errors appeared in the system. Someone was pulling the brakes from the inside. Years later, a journalist uncovered a digital artifact hidden inside a public database. A phrase repeated once, only once: Lazarus is not immortal. Cold cases began waking up. Not all of them, but enough. And somewhere in the machinery of erasure, a man who should not exist continued working, not to protect the system, but to dismantle it quietly. Because the most dangerous thing Lazarus ever created wasn't a killer. It was someone who remembered the dead and refused